It's going. You're live.
We're live. Welcome to Thunk Tank Podcast. We're here live in Village Studio. And thanks for joining us.
All right, let me hit go on this thing too. Welcome, YouTube watchers.
Oh, I see. It's two different recordings.
Boom. And we're live on everything.
We're live and inside.
All right, so Joe, why don't you just give people an update? They just heard our Seinfeld analysis.
Yeah, they all listen to
Welcome
that.
to the Thunk Tank Podcast.
If you're a first-time
It
listener,
almost sounds like I'm doing an intro like someone died and I'll, you know what I mean?
how about this is for an intro, Luke?
I'm Walter Cronkite. Nice.
There we go. That's your intro. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome. It's about fucking time you got here.
Just update people on so we just released a Seinfeld part 1 analysis. We do have a part 2 technically, but we had some audio problems. I'm working through it. So we're going to release this one like probably, this is a live stream right now coming August 27th or something. We're going to release this one first, and then it'll buy me some more time to clean up the audio on Seinfeld part 2. So do keep an eye out for that. It's basically what you heard in Seinfeld analysis part 1. Excuse me. I don't burp a lot.
Who are you talking to?
The audience. And it's like would you characterize it as just like the wasted version of Seinfeld analysis?
Yeah, it's like you start doing Seinfeld analysis, and then you take a pee break an hour in, and you come back and you're drunk, and you keep going.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. If you liked part 1, which I've talked to many fans so far who have listened to part 1 and they loved it, you're going to love part 2. It's stellar. It's fantastic. Speaking of our newest episode right now, wouldn't you say it's the best?
You could work on your Trump impression a little bit.
Oh, I don't. I have no desire to actually improve my Trump impression.
So I think let's just catch people up on status of the podcast too. So this one's obviously without Johnny again, but he's about to have a lot more free time. We're going to be coming at you with
he's been beering hard.
Very regular episodes.
He's been brewing.
I think we're just going to find one day and keep doing it. So that'll be a good fall. I think we'll almost be putting one out a week. I think if we keep on top of it.
Yeah, well, we're going to up our game shortly. It's the summertime blues.
Summertime blues. Like, we're all busy. I'm also about to go to Turkey for 3 weeks on a trip, so I don't plan on podcasting from there.
We'll see about that.
I mean, who knows, right? But
we could go international, man.
We were going to today do the episode. We have this cool episode planned on colonization of like past colonization, part 1, and then part 2 would be like future colonization.
Our studio got raided by conquistadors. It really set us back.
Yeah. They just came in and they were like, "This is our land." We were like, "Wait, what?"
And then they beat us to death with chickens and boomsticks.
Yeah,
it was brutal.
So that's going to be coming at you. I'm going to preview a little bit today because I basically want to give like a sort of check-in with politics as today's episode. John McCain just died. We thought that would be like...
I don't think we've been avoiding politics lately, but it's so like sickening at this point.
Yeah, it's worth checking in with.
Yeah, well, I mean, like we've covered politics a lot, and we'll get back into it. Well, we are about to get back into it a little bit, but don't you feel like you kind of hit... There's like waves where you just kind of hit saturation.
I just can't deal with it. Yeah,
I'm just like
annoyed by it.
It's like every time, and I've been saying it for about 2.5 years now, right? Where every time I turn, it's funny, I still say turn on the news. I don't turn on the news. I click onto CNN.com or BuzzFeed.
Well, what are you doing on CNN.com or BuzzFeed, Joe? that could be your problem.
It's definitely part of the problem. Getting really shitty.
I mean, it's good to know what they're putting out, but at this point, I don't rely on even a CNN to give me a straight story.
Why don't we start with that briefly? Because I agree with you. I don't rely on CNN for a straight story either. I think they're better still than a lot of what I see at some other places, but that doesn't make it good.
It doesn't make it honest either, right?
No, it's definitely skewed in its own way. But so where do you go for people who like are dumb like me and just kind of, I'm in such the habit of, I've been going to CNN.com for like 8 years.
So I've kind of described this in the past. Anyway, so we're just going to get right into it with politics here.
Politics catch up, episode 20, whatever. Go.
I've tried to find like my own style of finding information online is sort of a learning curve itself, Like for example, I remember when I was younger in high school, I started to feel this like arrogant, haughty feeling of I can show YouTube your belly there,
Dude,
Joe.
it's hot as hell. I'm like
I
sweating.
know. I'm sorry about that.
I'm like wiping
If I
myself
put a fan
off,
on,
I'm
it would just
sweating.
cover our voices.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's pretty hot. So like I remember being young and watching things on Huffington Post and just generally feeling a haughtiness, arrogance about like
You would.
I know I would, right? but
Well, you did.
it wasn't like I didn't have like an honest sense of curiosity when I was approaching that stuff. It was a little bit more of like I wanted to seek out information just so I could have something to say.
Yeah.
And I didn't even give too much thought to whether that information was good or not because it was resonating with what I thought to be true, right? So at that time it was like Bush was president and any criticism of that was good, right? And anybody defending that was bad, right?
But don't you feel, because I remember back to that.
Now Huffington Post is garbage is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I remember back to that too, that era, because that's when I first really started to get any sort of semblance of interest in politics, because I would have been, in high school and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I remember back then, I feel like it was so much clearer in the sense that like we knew Fox News wasn't, straight and fast, like it should be maybe. And the other ones were pretty, they seemed pretty reliable in terms of not tilting.
Yeah.
Not like slanting. And now I think you're right. I mean, I read this stuff where like 10, 15 years ago, I feel like I would have read CNN and not had a problem with anything they're saying. But every time I go there, there's an article and I read the headline and I think to myself, bullshit. That's a misleading headline.
Yeah.
That's not what that study is really about. That's not what these statistics are really referring to. And that's not to say that I still think they're as bad as even somebody like Fox News, but Fox News gets it right sometimes too. It's not like Fox News always gets everything wrong.
Especially not now. Like sometimes
It's
they
just
get
they
it
still have
more right
psychos.
now,
Yeah, they just still have psychos, but everybody has psychos now is the problem.
Yeah.
It's just on different sides of the spectrum.
And those psychos can come, like, people say, oh, the problem is mainstream media. It's like, yeah, to a large degree, but it's not like one monolithic, like, organization where everyone gets together. It's one of these emergent things where narratives develop and then combine that with this clickbait phenomena where if your job is to make a headline where you're trying to get as many people to click it, you're already by defining that as your goal.
The fuck was that? Did a motorcycle just shit out its brains?
I think so, yeah.
Oh god, this is the Village
We're
Studio.
in a new
for
studio,
you.
yeah. Village Studio.
Yeah, we have a few studios. We have a country
Yeah, we
studio.
took all your Patreon money and we just bought a bunch of studios everywhere.
To reference Seinfeld analysis. Yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah. So it's like by saying that you're defining your goal as getting a bunch of clicks, you're already admitting that you don't have a goal of seeking truth, right?
Well, I mean, you could to some extent, but that might not be as important as gaining clicks, right? Like
Yeah,
that
and
could be.
so you could have a secondary or tertiary goal of like
Oh, third dairy, I like that.
tertiary, right?
No, I'm gonna raise third dairy, and classes start next week.
Yeah.
English writing classes. I'm gonna throw that in the mix. See what they think about that.
So like it could be
students.
like third on your list, right? Like I'm seeking truth,
Yeah.
but first is clickbait, right?
And then the question is, because you can divide that further between individual writers and then the larger philosophy of an organization, right?
Yeah.
That's how sometimes I read news pieces, and Guardian's a pretty good example of that, where every once in a while I read a Guardian article, and I'm actually shocked at how right they get things, because then I read other Guardian articles. I made a couple of YouTube videos of them. Remember those?
Yes.
They're on our YouTube channel.
You picked apart
Where
a Guardian article.
I just destroy it because it's just utter nonsense, and it's bashing Elon Musk, and I'm like, the shameful part about that type of just catering to people who have already made up their minds about somebody is that you're not pointing out what the real like. There are plenty of things you could point to about Elon Musk if you don't like him and want to pick him apart.
Like I heard he's a dick to his significant others and whatnot.
Did you see that whole thing where he was calling the fuck was that, the kid stuck in the cave and he showed up with a submarine? It's like a fucking comic book, dude.
Yeah.
Do you know about this story?
Yeah.
He shows up with like the robot submarine.
Didn't the Navy SEAL or something equivalent to a Navy SEAL that ended up rescuing the people? him and Elon Musk got into this Twitter fight.
Yeah, and Elon Musk started cursing him out, calling him a pedophile.
Yeah.
Because he's like, only a pedophile would dive into to the dark cave to rescue some children.
Like, yeah, you just wanted to grab those kids' asses on the way out of the cave or something.
Yeah, and it's like, so like, I don't think, but there you go. So you could point to that even and be like, oh yeah, he's a shit person. But I don't even know if that's true. I think he's probably a guy who works, 80 hours a week, sleeps like 6 hours a month. And he says some crazy shit sometimes.
Yeah,
he probably needs a good night's sleep.
Everybody has the potential to be a dick like that.
Yeah, but I also didn't invent an electric car company.
So just to step back, we were going to do an episode on colonization, and Johnny's busy, so we're going to put that one on hold. So I was like, Joe, what should we should put something out there. I'm going away for 3 weeks. So I'm in the middle of watching this Vietnam documentary. It's on Netflix currently. It's the Ken Burns new Vietnam documentary came out like a year ago, something like that.
I didn't know it was that recent. That's cool.
Very recent.
Oh, nice.
I heard about it because Ken Burns and I think I'm getting this name right, Lynn Novak.
No, it's Heidi Klum, but close.
Yeah. So they were on Sam Harris's podcast and did an interview about this, and it made me be like, holy crap, because Sam Harris was like, yeah, I basically watched the whole thing in a weekend. And dude, this thing's 10 episodes and each one is like an hour and a half long. So
that's like a Netflix miniseries.
But the way they put it together, man, like I find myself sitting here and hitting next episode till 3 a.m, and it's a documentary about the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
There are dark moments. There are just interesting moments where it feels like, oh, I want to see what happens next. I mean, I know how the Vietnam War ends,
but that's the best.
I didn't really know how it ends.
Isn't that the most amazing kind of narrative where and that's what I often say. I don't think it's always true, but I think it's very, very often true, is that if you go into something knowing the ending, it should still stand on its own, right? Like you should still
right. You should be able to rewatch a series of something. Like I've watched Mad Men 2.5 times now.
Yeah, a lot of people, they say, especially readers, like avid readers, they'll say that their favorite books are the ones that they reread 2, 3, 4 times.
I read Mother Night twice, and it was better the second time.
Yeah, totally.
I caught more details, different details.
Yeah, if a story is ruined by you knowing the end of it, it may not be the best story, right?
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to talk about Vietnam a bit, and coincidentally, I had just gotten to the episode in this documentary where they were showing this old footage, because the footage that they have in this documentary, I didn't know such footage even exists or existed, and from dark, like violent stuff to just really cool interviews to the private conversations that like the president was having. Like they have these recordings of Kennedy talking to his advisors.
Yeah.
They have the phone calls that Lyndon Johnson made to like various people, and you get to hear, of course, now that it's like so far in the future, that like it wasn't behind the scenes that what was on the surface being told to the American public, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, I was just on the episode where
are you saying the
John
government
McCain
lies?
was shot down and he was taken prisoner by the North Vietnamese. And they had a video of him just like giving a message to his parents. He was being tortured because the North Vietnamese wanted to force the American prisoners to say publicly that they don't support the war, right? Because North Vietnamese, like, and the Viet Cong, because they were kind of separate things, right? You had the North Vietnamese, like, regular army, and then the Viet Cong.
Yeah.
Their goal wasn't to beat America. Their goal was to convince America, like, yeah, let's get the fuck out of here, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
So, anyways, and then John McCain died yesterday, right?
That was yesterday?
Yeah,
Feels
I think
like
so.
It was like 2 weeks ago now.
It was either yesterday or Saturday. I think it was
Saturday, yeah. Yeah.
Today's Monday, yeah.
They've been arguing about how long to have the
so
flags down.
I thought the three of those things that I was watching the Vietnam War thing, where we are currently with politics and Trump and John McCain dying, and the fact that like he ran for president, all these things, I just thought like that could be a good trifecta, another Seinfeld reference.
The trifecta.
To sort of have a checking in with politics, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because do you remember back when Obama was running against John McCain? That was 2008, right?
God, that was a decade ago, yeah.
And I was in high school, and I definitely remember thinking like, John McCain's the evil one and Obama's the good one. I was a freshman in college, actually. I didn't think for myself at that time, it was back when I would still like go to the HuffingtonPost.com and just kind of, I wouldn't read articles because I had an intellectual curiosity. I would read articles because I wanted to have information that I could play the gotcha game back against people, verbal tennis game.
You were a gotcha guy.
And
it happens.
It's telling to sort of a few things about John McCain are standing out to my mind when I'm thinking about Trump and current politics. One is you thought John McCain was the evil Republican running against Obama, who's the perfect Democrat.
See, that's interesting that you say
like
that.
Now, that's a way different balance now that we have Trump.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, though, because I remember very distinctly that election, because that was the first election that I got really involved in. In fact, that was probably the election I've been most involved in.
I think I got involved in it with you to a degree. I remember helping put out like signs and whatnot, right?
Oh, I destroyed a lot of signs during that election.
I mean, I put out signs. I didn't do anything illegal.
No, they were illegal signs.
Oh.
They were like signs that said like Tim Bishop equals illegal aliens. Like, that's not
just false advertising.
You're allowed to take down those signs.
I got you.
So we would go and destroy them, but it was fun. But we put up a lot of signs too, you know. But I my point is like because the way I remember it was more that like John McCain. It was kind of a weird parallel experience to what happened with Trump, where when McCain first, announced his candidacy and he was going through the motions and whatever, I wasn't entirely sold. But I said, all right, let me hear what he has to say. Even then I was like, let me hear what he has to say.
See, I wasn't even in that kind of an open-minded place.
A lot of people were swept. I mean, I was
not that it's my fault, but
well, here's the thing. I was one of those people too. I was like, yeah, I'm definitely on this Obama train. I was on the Obama train for years.
He had a train. Like,
I was on the Obama train way before he even started campaigning.
Before it was cool to be on the Obama
totally
train.
No, because I remember his 2004 DNC speech or whatever. Like that was his first, on the map. Like real moment,
mic drop moment,
and I thought to myself, this guy's he's gonna run for president. He's totally gonna run for. I didn't think in 2000. I thought maybe in like 10 years or so.
Well, they usually wait until it's looking like.
Well, I thought 2008
it's going to be work.
Well, what I thought was 2008 was going to be Hillary's turn, and then he would run in 2016 if she won, or 2012 if she lost a re-election, or if she just lost the election.
That was a pretty brutal primary, like Hillary versus Obama.
Oh yeah, because she really. I mean, talk about like everybody talks about.
She was playing dirty even then.
People talk about how she lost because she felt entitled to win the 2016 election. She felt entitled to win the 2008 primary.
Yeah.
But anyways, I remember I gave McCain a legitimate chance. I was like, there's very little chance that I'm going to vote for him, but I'm going to still listen to what he has to say.
Because he seemed like a real person. I know what you're going to say. Can I guess?
Drill, baby, drill.
Oh, you mean Sarah Palin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like that was...
Until Sarah Palin,
honestly,
and that was it.
Poor John McCain, because what I see in John McCain while we're just on him... let me just step back for a second. One of the things I really don't like that people can do is they make absolutes when they describe people. This person's good. That person's bad, right? And it's very easy to believe in this concept of like, yeah, John McCain is evil. George Bush is evil, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, then are you good in comparison to that, right? So I think John McCain...
I'm not a war criminal.
After watching this and kind of getting I always knew he was like a war veteran, but that didn't really tell me much. But seeing these videos of him being really young, and he was like getting emotional. Just he's a prisoner of war, and he's giving a message that he knows his family's going to see on TV.
Yeah,
dark shit.
Do you know how long he was prisoner of war for?
That's honorable. Like. Do
you know how long? Do you know how many? How long?
I'm gonna guess 9 years.
5 years.
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, I guess it was like 77 or 78 or something that he got
5
captured.
5 years.
And what is Trump? No, Trump's the one that said, "Oh yeah, he's not a hero. He got caught."
Have you watched that clip? Of Trump saying it? Fuck that guy. Unbelievable. I didn't
know Trump said it. I thought he just tweeted it.
Oh no, he says it he's in a debate, and the guy, or not a debate, some sort of interview. It feels like a debate, and basically the guy saying, "How could you call John McCain a dummy? He's a war hero." Blah blah blah. Like the guy's playing his high cards.
Yeah.
And to Trump's credit, he's like not buying it. He's like, oh, like this isn't. This is my fascination with Trump, because he then tries to take a higher ground of the fact that like that's not the point of what I'm talking about. But then he says, basically the conversation goes, well, you know, I supported McCain in 2008. I raised him $1 million and then he lost. And I didn't like him so much after that because I don't like losers. And then the guy said, well, how could you call him a loser? He's a war hero. And he says, he's a war hero because he was captured. I prefer people not to be captured, or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Or I prefer my heroes not to be captured.
All right, here it is. I got it.
Oh, you have it?
Yeah.
You actually found it? Oh,
Yep.
shit. Cue it up. Oh, this is intense.
Give me 1 second. Let me make sure. You're hearing it, right,
Oh,
Joe?
yeah. I hear it loud and clear.
Loud and beer?
Yeah. Are you going to get a beer?
No.
I could go for a beer. I might grab a beer.
Go for it. I'm playing this clip now.
I kind of want to hear the clip.
McCain, a war hero, 5.5 years as a POW, and you call him a dummy. Is that appropriate in running for president?
Okay, you got to let me speak though, Frank, because you interrupt all the time. Okay?
He's
He
a
hit
war
me.
hero.
He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years
He's
in a
a war
POW
hero because he
camp.
was captured. I like people that weren't captured. Okay? I hate to tell you.
Jesus.
He's a war
with
hero.
that?
He's a war hero.
By the way, he wasn't captured so much as his plane was shot down.
Yeah.
And when he got out of the water, there were a bunch of Viet Cong pointing
Who beat the shit out of him and dragged him away.
AK-47s at him,
Yeah.
supplied by the Soviets, yelling in Vietnamese, I suppose. Like, what would you do, Trump? Would you, like,
Trump, he would have died.
he can't even do one sit-up, you know?
I don't even think Trump knows what a setup is. He'd be like,
because he
yeah.
was captured. Okay? You could have, and I believe perhaps he's a war hero, but right now he said some very bad things about a lot of people. A beautiful day with incredible people that were wonderful, great Americans. I will.
Classic Trump speech, by the way, is he just, instead of saying wonderful, he fills in the speech. It's like a fucking middle school essay.
Oh, I could
with-
teach a whole class on Trump rhetoric.
on how to not speak like Trump.
or how to do it if you want to succeed with dumb people. Yeah, this impeachment party is going to be off the hook. I'm so looking forward to it. Are you coming? Are you coming to? I'm having an impeachment party, dude. Are you down? Are you there? You should come.
Sorry, guys. Wait.
Oh, are we not recording? Are we not live?
How about now? All right, we're good. We're back.
I hear everything.
No, I fucked up the audio for a second somehow.
That's fine. I was just saying, yeah, no, it's the fact that he can say that shit that he says, and it's just it also reveals how bullshit a lot of what people actually value is, where it's like how he gets away with saying those things. And there's a whole laundry list of things he said, but what it came down to was a lot of voters, they said, he's going to pick the Supreme Court justice I like. He says what I feel.
Well, let's get
About
back
other
to that.
things, right?
Just while still on the McCain thing, I just want to say, like, the emotions that I was feeling watching this Vietnam documentary and taking the time to put myself in the shoes of someone who signs up for the military knowing they're going to go to a war and they know they might die, and you have to kind of separate whether it was actually good to enter the war from a local person's decision, right?
Yeah.
So on the level of, even call it the Iraq War, which I would say Vietnam was, parts of Vietnam at certain times were more justifiable than Iraq, right?
Oh God, yeah, that's a whole other.
I mean,
thing.
that might be an idiotic statement that I just said. I really don't know, but my main point is, if you're a soldier signing up to go to Iraq or Vietnam,
Yeah.
I really see that individual person as honorable. There's
Yeah.
a deep sense of honor, and we can get into honor. I remember you said you might want to talk about honor in general.
Yeah.
But there's something so honorable and meaningful that somebody would take on a sacrifice, like not only just beforehand when you sign up for the military and you say, I might go there and I might die, but when you're actually on the battlefield and you hear about the actual real-time heroic things that people did, you know, to save friends, or they run back to try and retrieve the body of their, you know, friend, and they get shot in the process. They're not even trying to save someone. They know they're toast, you know?
Yeah.
And then you hear fucking this.
in running for president.
Okay, you got to let me speak though, Frank, because you interrupt all the time. Okay?
He's
He
a
hit
war
me.
hero.
He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's
in
a war
POW
hero because he
camp.
was captured. I like people that weren't captured.
Like the juxtaposition
It's
of,
wild, dude.
of that. I don't know what. I mean, Trump's not thinking, when he says something like that.
He's not thinking on the level. He's still such an anomaly like that because
I don't know how to analyze him.
well that's the problem with him because so many people who would say something that egregious, you would say they're clearly not thinking because any politician who would say anything about that would be weighing their political points,
As McCain was known to do, right? Like
Well-
what I'm saying is, like, at the same time we can talk about McCain being a hero, he was a politician later in life.
Well-
He picked Sarah Palin as his running mate. Like, what the fuck is that?
and that was one of those times where you sort of looked at that and said, "Oh, that's an ultimate like sellout pandering move, right? Who is that impressing exactly, other than appealing to some sort of aspect of his base that he feels like it's going to get him voters?" I think he had bad advisors, man. Whoever convinced
Trump
him,
or McCain? McCain, right? You're
McCain,
saying?
yeah, whoever convinced him to pick Sarah fucking Palin as his running mate. Because I remember me and a lot of other people were like, "Yeah, that door's closed. Like, she can't be anywhere near the presidency."
So then, Joe, I
Not
have a
gonna
question
happen.
for you. What's worse, Trump and him saying things like this, or this?
And when it comes to establishing your worldview, I was curious, what newspapers and magazines did you regularly read before you were tapped for this to stay informed and to understand the
I've
world?
read most of them, again, with a great appreciation for the press, for the media.
But like what one
coming-
specifically? I'm curious that you.
Katie Couric nailing
all
it.
of them, any of them that have been in front of me over all these years. I have.
So when she says any of them that have been in front of me over these
Man,
years,
that's
she
rough.
means like the local library newsletter while she's eating like Cheerios or something for
See,
breakfast.
and to Trump's credit, do you know what he would have said? Nobody even bothered to ask him that question because they know what answer he would have given. Like the Daily News.
well, so in the game theory of it, right?
and people
Trump-
would be like, his constituents would be like, "Yeah, I don't read fucking Time magazine, fucking liberal propaganda."
So the game theory of it, Trump actually comes out on top, right?
Yeah, totally.
Because it's like if we're playing a game of hockey, or let's just
We're
make it
not-
easier.
I'm
Let's
not
say
gonna-
chess.
I'm not going to play you in hockey.
Let's say chess.
I'm not going to play you in chess either. You're going to beat me.
It's going to really ruin the thought experiment if we're going to get stuck here where you
How
just
about-
don't want
how
to
about
play
checkers?
chess.
Can we
Fine,
play checkers?
checkers is
Okay.
fine, Joe.
Chinese-
It doesn't fucking,
Chinese checkers?
Yeah, even better.
Okay, Chinese checkers.
So
we need 5 players for
if
that,
we're
though.
following the rules between each other, right? And there's a sense of we both want to win, but if we don't follow the rules, the game's no fun because the game is not a game anymore, right?
Yeah, it falls apart.
So let's say I make a move, you make a move, I make a move, and it looks like I'm winning, and you make an illegal move, right? I'm going to switch it back to chess because I don't know anything about Chinese checkers. So you just make an
Gotcha.
illegal move and something that, you move your knight in a way that a rook would move or something, and you say, check. And I go, Joe, you can't move a piece like that. That's illegal. And you go, no, it's
Loser.
not. No, it's not.
Loser.
It's fine. You're just mad that you're losing. Check. And I'm like, Joe, do you want to play chess or like what's going? Trump did that. There was a certain way that the game of politics were played, and it involved truth, but it also involved a way of lying, which was like you have to lie consistently, and you have to lie in a way that people can at least see your motives, right? So when
Yeah.
John McCain lied, it was still within the larger context of like he respects the country enough to not lie to a big enough, kind of thing that would be like treason, for example. I think that.
Yeah.
I think he has too much honor, right? Obama lied a lot, right? Obviously, like everybody who makes it to the presidency probably has to lie to
Sure,
some
yeah.
degree. But I do think Obama had a sense of dignity and honor towards what this experiment of our country is, right?
Yeah, and larger
You don't get
goals.
any of that with Trump. You get the feeling that he would just say checkmate, and you'd be like, Mr. President, that's not the right move. He'd be like, and he'd look at you like either that's the right move and I win, or you're fired, right?
Yeah.
And so he didn't play by the rules, and the media didn't adapt to the game
No.
theory and know how to take him down.
They stayed within the patterns of what they knew and how they knew to fight back, and it
didn't work on him.
Because I forget the name of the philosophy, but it's this idea that when you're given two alternatives and you don't like either of them, you create a third alternative, and it's one that nobody's thought of before, and it's one that nobody knows how to counter because it's not in the playbook. There's no rule book about this.
Yeah.
And if nobody can react in time to this, you move on to the next one. And you've already won because they're left trying to figure out what the fuck
It's
just
like
happened.
a game of duels, but you have a new type of sword that no one's ever seen before.
Yeah, it's like, why is that sword like bend at like 5 90-degree angles? Like,
Right.
I don't know how to fight that.
You know what one of those swords
Doesn't make
Trump
sense.
had was? Because he had many different swords, but one of them was flat out lying. So most
Yeah.
politicians would be like, I can't tell a certain kind of lie if it's going to be incredibly easy to get caught in that lie.
Yeah.
But Trump was like, I don't care. You can play the clip of me saying it. I'll just keep saying I didn't say it. You know? And like nobody knows how to deal with that. Like if you, let's say you took a video and you showed it to Trump and you said, here's you saying that. And Trump's like, I didn't say that. It's like, well, what is this? That's fake news.
Well, he would say, that's not what I mean. That's not what I meant.
Oh yeah, I clearly didn't mean that. Like, you know, you're just trying to play gotcha media, right?
Yeah, fake news. And then he ties it back into his larger psychotic narrative where it's like, okay, we're back to this now. We're just looping back around to square one and we haven't gotten anywhere and you're still somehow controlling the country, which is just as disturbing. I'm freaking out, man.
So, we're coming up on episode 26, I think. Oh, no,
No,
we
like
already
28,
passed
dude.
it.
Yeah.
So, over 10 episodes ago, we did an episode called Political Polarization on the Left and Right. And I would say, in large part,
Most
although we talked
popular
about
episode.
how crazy like Trump was, of course, I had a lot of criticism of the left and sort of the tactics of social justice warriors and that kind of game that the left plays. And I wrote a long blog post about that, just kind of like trying to zoom out. And since then, there's been this movement known as the intellectual dark web.
Oh, boy.
And I just want to give like a short little preview because I think
Conspiracy.
I am gonna write like I think on my like long 12-hour flight to Turkey, I'm just gonna like use that time and like write out my thoughts in like a blog post because like whenever I do that,
You realize how shady this sounds. You just said that you're flying to a foreign country for 12 hours, during which time you're going to
write about the intellectual dark web.
Write to the masses about the truth behind the international dark web.
Intellectual dark web.
Whatever. I mean, I support it fully. I'm just saying from an outside observer.
I have a lot of detail to come on that, and I've been watching a lot of videos and really trying to get to the bottom of what I think all of that stuff is. I think if you're the kind of person that's already turned on to it, I think be on the lookout for that episode, and I will include a lot of links because a lot of people way smarter than me have already analyzed it. But I like taking a topic and making a podcast episode about it because it sort of forces me to like figure out what I actually think, right?
You got to figure out the truth, man.
And I've noticed that with the topics that I really care about, I actually enjoy putting in hours of work of like I've watched 10 plus hours of videos of various people from the intellectual dark web, people criticizing it. And you know what one of the hardest things is? Because I'm obviously on the side of the intellectual dark web. It's the IDW for short.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's by the way, it's designed to sound silly. You know, by definition, they chose that name so that the media would use it against them, and the media totally.
Are they the guys in those white masks with the voice changes?
No, specifically one incredibly smart fellow by the name of Eric Weinstein, and he set up the bait for the media, and they totally took it. And so, basically, the concept is, I would say, for our conversation right now, the intellectual dark web is sort of like the antidote to what is wrong right now, to the type of thinking that seems to have taken over. Because it's like the right, you know, where you place the blame, right or left, for starting this problem of polarization, it's hard to say. And I've heard arguments go both ways, where it's like, well, you look at like the behavior of someone like a Harry Reid, he's doing just as nefarious things in the background that someone like Mitch McConnell is doing.
Read about Harry Reid with the nuclear waste disposal site.
I don't know anything about that.
Perfect example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, so Democrats are just as nefarious as Republicans, if not more sometimes. It's always been a game. And what we seem to have gotten away from is a basic sense of respect for intellectualism, respect for proper conversation, respect for admitting your own ignorance, admitting you were wrong, respect for the ability to change your mind about something, respect, most importantly, to not have a fucking opinion on everything. Everybody out in the world has a strong, not everyone, but so many people have strong opinions about so many things, and they really shouldn't, know?
Well, I think a lot of it in part has to do with the confluence of me using fancy words like that, but also the fact that...
Because you're better than us?
Well, clearly, but that goes without fancy wordsing. I mean, I think we're at this weird time, and I think what you're talking about or what you're touching upon with the intellectual dark web is this idea that we haven't quite figured out whether this is, I think it is in large part a transitional mode between sort of big media and the ability for people to communicate on all these different types of platforms that they do, like Twitter and that sort of thing. And it hasn't really worked itself out yet. So you have so many places now producing content. You have so many still big media sources like, the media giants, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, like the giants turning out what they can and sort of almost like solidifying themselves within their sort of niches of, that perspective.
Well, they're getting desperate.
Yeah, that they're going to defend at all costs because they have to, because they'll lose out to all the other crap that's online already. And everybody else gets lost within that.
They could adapt too.
Well, they could adapt, but the problem is that, like you said, I mean, 100 years ago, I couldn't have an opinion on everything. Guess what? Because I didn't know what the fuck was going on in the world. How would I know what's going on in Pennsylvania?
But you still don't know because we're in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Oh my God, we are in.
No, I don't even know what I put. You still don't really know what's going on in the world.
But I have the illusion that I do.
Yes.
And that's the problem, is that I can just find, and I mean, this gets into all sorts of other issues on the fact that more so now than ever, you can find any information to support whatever psychotic worldview you have. This is
whether it's flat Earth.
I was just going to say, perfect examples.
Because you just listened to the Neil Tyson,
the rise of the
Joe
flat
Rogan
Earth.
episode, right?
The rise of the flat
halfway
Earthers.
through it.
It's fantastic.
I mean, there are flat Earth conventions.
It's in Denver this year.
Want to go?
I
say let's get stoned in Denver and go to the flat Earth convention.
I think it's in
Wait, Thunk Tank audience.
It's in November.
If you fund us a trip to Denver, we will go around with our microphones and interview people at the Flat Earth Convention.
I tell you what, we're going to set up a Patreon tier. Fund us to Flat Earth Convention 2018.
It's called a Patreon goal, but go on.
Yeah, well, this is my point, and we'll do that. We'll do a lot.
I'll be there.
I actually looked into this, by the way.
Oh, I know you did.
I was drunk the other night, and I was looking at the speakers. Dude, it's a scene, man. The guest list of speakers. Watch some of their YouTube videos.
So speaking of having those
wild stuff.
Strong opinions, right? You would say you and I both have a strong opinion on why the Earth isn't flat, right?
Did you say why it isn't flat?
Yes, why it's round.
Are you sure?
Okay, I see. So one of the interesting things is if we were to step outside and go down the street to the local bar,
yeah,
I would say the majority of people would agree that the Earth is round, and they would laugh at the fact that people think the Earth is flat. But let's say we ask 20 people, or 10 people, let's keep the math easy. How many out of those 10 people would be able to actually give a legitimate, good, well-spoken answer as to why the Earth is round and why that should be obvious?
The moon's round. Buy me a shot.
Well, that's what I mean. Like,
that's a good answer.
If you have the right opinion, but you have bad reasons for it, are you any better than someone who has the wrong opinion and also has bad reasons for it?
We should do a Thunk Tank Extra and get some asshole flat earther and go to a bar around here and just have them shoot down. Well, yeah, the moon's a disc, but so's the Earth. That's because it's round. Doesn't mean it's a sphere. And drunk people will be like, "Oh shit, I don't know the difference between round and sphere."
Should the game be like, right. Let's see how many
people we can convert?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I can be pretty convincing.
Oh, I could totally be convincing. Like
I usually
just
try
said.
to be convincing for like cool science stuff.
It
but,
makes sense. Antarctica's an ice wall, dude. Go any direction, you'll hit ice eventually, dude.
You know what? One of the points Neil deGrasse Tyson made, he was just on Joe Rogan's podcast. Go check it out. Great episode so far. Also, I love how Neil deGrasse Tyson just was ranting, and at one point he's like, "Come on, Joe, you can respond." Like,
Yeah,
I'm just
no, he
Yeah.
stops and he goes, should I stop? Do you want to like?
do you wanna talk too?
And Joe Rogan's just like stoned as fuck. He's
Yeah.
like, no, just keep going, man.
Yeah.
Like I've read some of the comments on that video, and half of them were like, I love it when Neil deGrasse Tyson interviews Joe Rogan.
Yeah, and blows his mind.
Yeah, and just
So,
like talks.
I was just when I was parking my car before, I was just at the point, and it was a really good point that Tyson was making, which was it is just as intellectually lazy to believe in something as it is to like disbelieve in something. In other
Yeah.
words, he was trying to say if you believe that the earth is flat and you haven't gone through the work to look at all the evidence and reconsider your opinion, decide if you're sure about that, if you're, that kind of thing. That's intellectually lazy because
Yeah.
there's plenty of good evidence out there that the earth is not flat. However, on the flip side, if you're sitting here thinking, yeah, the earth is round, I'm right, and you're an idiot, you flat earther, but you don't have the tools and the explanations and the knowledge to explain why it's actually round, you're also just taking that information on faith, right? You're just saying that, yeah, I mean, it's round because it's obvious. But that's just another way to say, yeah, I believe this because everyone believes it. And that's a bad reason to believe something.
He had another great point about he was talking about Donald Trump and the Space Force with Joe Rogan.
Oh, I didn't get to that part yet.
Oh, you didn't? I thought it was pretty early on, but
I was kind of like, cooking during it, so I could.
oh, I gotcha. Basically, the gist
I was
is
going to say stone cooking, and then I didn't, but now I did.
all right. Well, we're live. Yeah, he
It's a comedy podcast, Joe.
yuck. He essentially says how it's easy to along the lines of what you're saying. It's easy to
I'm
just
going to get a beer. Keep talking. I can
Go
hear
for it.
you in the real world here, too.
I'm freaking out, man. This is too meta. But he talks about how it's easy to just look at somebody like Trump and say, oh, he says Space Force, that's ridiculous. And in fact, most people I know who are hardcore anti-Trumpites, which I would say I am too, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to just shoot down everything when good things could come from it. And Space Force is a good example. Neil Tyson points out how it's like, yeah, just because he's proposed it, he said, I proposed a Space Force 15 years ago. And at the time, they were like, the Air Force is pretty much doing all that. And I was like, okay. And now he said, well, yeah, if we have a Space Force, there's a lot of good things that we could do with that, with like deflecting asteroids and stuff. But like, we should do good stuff with it. And he said, the perfect example, actually, he didn't say this, but I was thinking perfect example is, do you know who founded the EPA? Who do you think founded the EPA?
I know it was founded in the late 70s after we went to the moon.
So who founded it?
A military person is probably what you're getting at, right?
Richard Nixon.
What year was it in?
It was like the early 70s.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right.
Nobody fucking believes me when I say Richard
A
Nixon.
Republican, right?
A crazy one.
Republicans are evil, though, Joe.
Crazy one.
They don't care about the environment. They're evil people who only
Dude.
have the goal of destruction and getting rich.
When I tell liberals that Richard Nixon was president when the EPA was founded, they're like, no, it's fake news. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, he's a Republican. And I go,
Right.
It doesn't matter.
He also ended the war.
He also ended the Vietnam War. So the point being, going back to what Neil Tyson was saying, is you can't just say that. I mean, yeah, sure, most things might be a train wreck, but good things can come out of it if we take advantage of the shit otherwise that we have to put up with, right?
Well, it was in the larger context of Neil Tyson has a new book coming out.
The military.
On the military and
Yeah.
its sort of role. What would you say? How it's been a supportive role, a
Astrophysics.
parallel role for science.
Yeah, and particularly astrophysics, because I guess he's, obviously highly tuned into that.
And particularly, the idea is that what's something that a government and the people that run it are very happy to fund, right, is military expenditures, right?
Oh, God, that was another thing Tyson was saying, that, like, I forget what percent he said the military was, but if you cut, I think NASA is like 1/4 of 1%, or 4/10 of 1% or something of the federal
Yeah,
budget.
people say, why don't we cut NASA's budget? What are they doing?
Well, he
That
said
kind
if
of argument.
if you cut that percent off a dollar bill,
You're not even in the ink.
you're not even in the ink. And in fact, you could spend that dollar bill anywhere in the country and nobody would blink an eye. Nobody would not accept it.
Because it looks like a full dollar bill.
Looks like a full dollar
Because
bill.
we're talking 1% is 1 out of 100.
Yeah.
0.4 of 1%
It's less than a half.
is take that 1 out of 100 and make it just under half of that, right? And so that's his classic counter to the argument. Why are you spending money up there when you could be spending it down here?
I will say, I mean, I'm a pretty big fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I would say I'm very excited for that new book.
I want whatever coffee he has in the morning, dude.
Oh my god, hell yeah, dude! Have you read Astrophysics for People in a Hurry?
No.
Great. You said that so guiltily.
No, I just spilled beer all over myself.
Anyways, it's a great book.
You read it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to do a class.
I still have
I wanna-
another book of his that I have to
I want to
read.
use it in a class on like science communication, but it's like fucking impossible to get like a class other than freshman comp around here. But that's a whole other story for another day. That's
Yeah, I would
another
love to
education
teach that shit, dude.
I would teach the hell out of it.
Especially, I would love to teach it to people who maybe haven't really heard these ideas.
Yeah, it's
Like,
good stuff.
I wrote when we did our teaching episode, I wrote a blog post on basically what the two main things I focus on while teaching. And number one was teaching people how to think. And I think the phrase teach people how to think is basically another way to say scientific literacy.
Yeah.
And this is what Neil deGrasse Tyson, I think I learned from him. Maybe I knew it to a degree, but I didn't really feel like I knew it until I heard him explicitly say, like, learning how to think is learning how do you acquire information.
Yeah.
Or what's the best way I've heard him say it? He says, scientific literacy is what amount of inquisitiveness do you bring to the table? So the classic example is, hey, Joe, I have these special beer cans. If you rub them together and sit on them, you'll live 30 years longer than if you don't do this.
I'm rubbing some fucking beer cans together.
So what would be the first question? Might be something like,
Luke, have you switched to
what are they
whiskey?
made of? Are they made of regular beer can material? Or you might ask,
How hard do I have to rub?
how hard do I have to rub, right? Do you have to rub them for me?
Luke,
do I have to lube them up first?
Where'd you find this genie?
So it's
this
what
genie at?
level of inquiry do you bring to things, right?
Yeah.
And that's a great way to put it, because I feel like once I heard that, it made me a little bit more of a dick, because I mean I've since learned how to take that,
You're a little bit dick.
what I think is
You might want to check the phrasing.
skepticism and inquisitiveness, right? And
Yeah.
this ties right into how to be a 2018 citizen and how to read the news and know what you're reading, know what's good news, what's bad news, right? I think, when you first kind of learn how to be a skeptic, it's very easy to confuse that with being a dick. Because you'll be at a party and someone's like, oh, yeah, I knew your birthday was then. Like, I could totally tell you're a Capricorn. And you just want to say, are you a fucking idiot,
Do you know what's interesting?
And I did.
Do you know what's interesting about you saying that is that I think Neil deGrasse Tyson himself is a good example of that, because when I say I'm a pretty big fan of him now, that's only fairly recently. And I've been following.
He's changed recently.
I've been following him for. There was an instinct to try to not be dismissive, but at the same time he would slip into and I think he didn't even necessarily recognize it all the time. Of like he would kind of chuckle, but like in a derisive way. And sometimes that's okay if somebody's purposefully being ignorant or willfully being ignorant. But a lot of times I saw interviews where people were very genuinely confused. They're like, "Yeah, no, I don't." What are you talking about? How is that how gravity works?
Yeah.
And he would kind of like chuckle and be like, well, clearly if you know this, then you know this.
Even if it was something like, he's saying, well, obviously the astronauts are not in zero gravity in the space station. They're in microgravity because they're in free fall. And
Right.
people go, I thought space had no gravity. And he looks at them like, how do
Yes.
you think the solar system works then, you jackass?
Perfect
You
example.
know?
Or that,
and it's like, well,
or that
most
space is
people
empty.
I've had that conversation.
I didn't
Most
realize
people
that.
don't know that space has gravity.
I didn't realize that until maybe like 5 years ago. Till I was like out of college.
Yeah, me was like 8. But anyways, go on.
Well, you know, some of us are drunker than others, but my point being, like, once I figured that out, I was like, oh, okay, I understand that concept now, and it makes a lot more things to make sense. But if I was kind of on the border or on the fringe or just not as engaged, and somebody was like, you know, oh, you don't I would be like, fuck this guy, you know. But having said that, to his credit, over the last year or two, probably really since he was promoting the Astrophysics for People in a Hurry book, he's gotten a lot more patient. I feel like with that type of questioning of just and he talks about
he's almost changed his.
Yeah, he talks about in the Joe Rogan interview about how important it is for him to be a science communicator, and he's always been a science communicator, but he seems to be emphasizing it. It's just like his form of communication and like his medium of just trying to relate information and relate logical what you hear in fucking grade school that means nothing. It's called critical thinking. That's what he's promoting is critical thinking.
Right.
But actual critical thinking that you don't learn in grade
so
school.
for many years, he's had a great stance on politics, which has always been, I stay out of politics. And he's always said,
he talks about that a lot.
I see
about how
my
he doesn't
job
deal
as
with
just
people on
getting
Twitter.
people to think straight in the first place, right? He's saying it's really unhelpful to criticize politicians because we, at least right now, because in a lot of countries this isn't true, but right now we live in a democracy where we have elections.
Well,
So
Russia
you-
just hacked the DNC again.
I know.
Did you hear about that?
Table that, but the point being that you can't really blame the politicians for behaving the way they are if you're in a society where people get elected. Because if you get elected, then you should blame the stupidity of the people to elect people that do things that they shouldn't be doing or that they don't want them to be
best thing
doing.
about the 2016 election, fucking wake up call. Way more people know way more about politics than at any point I ever remember in my life.
So,
Ever,
the
hands
phrase
down.
is like a silver lining, right? And I remember when early on after Trump won the election,
He didn't win. He lost by 3 million votes.
he won the election though.
He won the Electoral College.
Yes, which is how elections work in this country.
I disagree.
What do you disagree about?
Watching your mind break. I love running you through these contradictions, man.
It's actually good though.
yeah.
It's almost like if you force me to sharpen my sword a little
Well,
bit.
I don't believe in the Electoral College, but we can do a whole other episode on that.
I mean
if you want.
that's a fair point, but it's not fair to say he didn't win. It's fair to say he didn't win the popular vote, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if Hillary had won narrowly by the Electoral College, the Democrats and the left would be making the exact opposite argument, saying like, well, it's not about the popular vote, it's about the Electoral College. You know?
Totally, yeah.
So
absolutely.
it's just a game with that.
yeah, but I still think it should be done away with.
So definitely, I think the zoomed out quality of people, and maybe this is related to the intellectual dark web because I see it as related. The type of thing Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about, etc., is just get people thinking straight in the first place.
Is
And
it et cetera or et cetera?
I have no fucking idea.
I'm pretty
dude.
sure it's et cetera.
Dude, one thing
'Cause
I learned about podcasting is I
ET
can't. I have to. The little guy that watches what I say, he has to go on a lunch break.
Yeah, you're sweating over there.
Yeah. I mean, it's fucking hot in
as
here,
hell
dude.
in here. I'm dying, man.
It's hot as hell.
It's et cetera because it's the abbreviation is etc dot. Everybody says et cetera, and I don't know why because it's spelled etc.
Let's catch people up on what beer we're drinking.
Oh shit, we forgot to do that. Well, we started with Beta, which I picked out because it's a New York brewery, and I've never heard of it before. It's Common Roots.
While we're on the Neil Tyson thing, right? Beta.
What?
Oh, I mean, just like sciencey.
Jesus,
I didn't
Christ.
eat dinner.
Oh my God, Luke, you had an empty stomach again?
Yeah.
Oh God,
That's the best way to have beer, dude.
That's true. So it's in South Glen Falls. I don't know where the hell that is, but I think it's in upstate New York, and I'm a New Yorker, so I figured I'd give them a shout out. Wasn't thrilled, to be honest.
I thought it was fine. I like it better than what we're currently drinking.
I totally disagree with that.
Oh, really?
Oh, I think
I mean, we have slightly
are you
different beer
drinking?
palates.
Are you drinking this?
Yeah.
The mustache. Oh, I think the mustache is like twice as good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The second beer that we poured was called Powder Dreams.
Like, is that Captain Lawrence?
Captain Lawrence Brewing Company.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
I've had this hop a few times. So it's dry hopped with Citra lupulin powder.
Lupulin.
Basically, if you've ever had any loser friends who happen to smoke weed, you may notice in the bottom of a grinder you get this like buildup of keef.
Wait, that's lupulin?
No, I mean, lupulin is sort of the hop version of that.
Oh,
so it's
I got
sort
you.
of like the
It's
powdery
it's the
resin
hop keef.
hop keef, basically.
Yeah.
And so it's
Why do you know so much about weed
dude, I have a lot of friends that just went down the wrong path.
in life? Dare didn't stick.
Yeah, like
It
I
didn't
know
take?
friends who don't eat dinner and then like
They saw
eat some
in,
weed for dinner and then
They
podcast.
saw in Dare class. You saw coke, heroin, weed, and you're like, I'm going for the weed.
No,
No, I mean your friends.
no. The first time I ever had weed was in Denver, Colorado, where it's legal.
Not according to the federal government in which you live, their jurisdiction.
According to the federal government,
Are we allowed to podcast even according to the federal government?
I have no idea.
I don't know what their guidelines are either.
What are the rules?
I think
What
pot's
are the
legal in
rules?
DC, right?
Huh?
Pot's legal in DC, isn't it?
Yep, it's legal in Massachusetts.
It's about to
There's
be
a
in New
bunch.
York.
It's about to be.
You want to take a bet?
Dude, speaking of politics, like, and
I bet you
how
1 year.
politicians aren't real, right? Governor Cuomo, like, totally changed his tune on pot only because it was like
No, do you know why?
politically viable for him.
Perfect example. Cynthia Nixon, who's running against him, the Sex and the City actress, she's running against him.
I don't follow politics enough.
Here's-
There's a Sex and the City actress running against
Yeah,
him.
the really hot one. Yeah, see, now you're interested.
No, I'm less interested.
No, dude, hear me out. She called him out. I haven't read much about her, honestly, but I respected her for this because she called him out for last year. He came out all about how weed is a gateway drug because people were asking, like, when is New York going to, get on this bandwagon? Like, it's happening in Massachusetts and, now East Coast as well as West Coast. And he stated that it was a gateway drug. That it's everything according to the federal government is all in line with how things should be. Cynthia Nixon called him out. About a month or two later, he comes out with a study. His department or whatever comes out with a study. Not only is weed great, we should legalize it, and in fact, we plan to next year, conveniently after this upcoming election.
We ran the poll numbers.
He ran the numbers. He has a lot of smart people working for him. He ran the numbers. They said, yeah, you know what? Among your primary constituents who could go against you and vote for Cynthia Nixon for governor, you're better off legalizing this because guess what? The Republicans upstate who aren't voting for you anyways aren't going to give a fuck if you legalize weed. They're still going to hate you. That's that conversation that they had.
Can I propose an alternate way to think about this?
Absolutely.
Or I'll propose.
You're wrong, but you can do it.
Two ways to think about it. One is it a bad thing, even if the motivation for a politician is to win? Is it a bad thing that they are trying to get the pulse of what the population wants and then marketing their ideas to reflect that? Is that a bad thing in a democracy?
That's a good point.
Because like at a certain level, you want your representative to support what the people want. But in a different model, you would want the representative to be the sincere version of who they are. And the public's job is to elect people that they trust to make decisions. So this would be the difference between like a direct democracy where people vote directly on issues versus where we vote for people who vote on the issues, right?
Yeah.
So when we vote for people, to what degree should the governor or whoever it is, senator, congressman, to what degree should they take into account what the people want versus what they think is right? Right?
It's a good question.
I think there's probably, it's like anything, there's probably a balancing act there.
But it's a different balancing act for a lot of different politicians. Like some politicians,
especially
are
if it's a complete flip flop.
Totally, yeah.
Then it's like this is a flip flop, right?
Yeah, well, because
Hillary Clinton on gay marriage, that was a flip flop.
Well, and some of those are very calculated, and some of them. What's interesting about that? I mean, gay marriage is a perfect example. I think we've talked about this too, where I read an interview. I forget who it was with. We'll link it in the description. There's no chance in hell.
By the way, audience, I bought a pad at Staples, so now, when we say we're going to link something in the description.
Can you write down Guy? Can you get this for me?
Yeah, sure.
So Guy reveals Obama's true gay agenda.
Done.
Yeah, that doesn't sound exactly like what I meant to say, but he was an advisor or something. He was somehow involved, like in the inner circle of the White House, where he had like.
We will link this in the description. It's on a piece of paper.
We'll type it out. Yeah.
I'll be in Turkey, and when I publish this episode,
yeah,
I'll be like, damn, the piece of paper's in my cupboard.
Yeah. So, anyways, this guy said that when Obama got elected, he had his whole liberal agenda, and he accomplished. I mean, what he accomplished, like you can't underrate it in terms of a liberal agenda, right?
Obama.
Like, yeah.
With Obamacare.
Obamacare, same-sex marriage. I mean, these are monumental societal.
It was a monumental
shifts.
8 years of
Huge.
Of not only like things that he did, but just general cultural shifts about
Huge
how people
cultural
think
shifts.
about things.
Huge, as the president would say.
I don't know to what degree it was.
Well, so here's
because of him or
well, no.
or
So
not,
so here's the thing. So this guy said that his first term, Obama's first term, he comes in and in these meetings, these closed door meetings, he's saying how, yeah, we're going to hit healthcare, we're going to hit same-sex marriage. We're going to hit all these other social welfare programs. His advisor said, whoa, slow down. You got to take this one battle at a time. You're going to be lucky if you get healthcare this first term. That's monumental. They said, you can't go around saying that same-sex marriage is great. Can't do it. We need as much political capital as we can get right now to pass healthcare. Like, you got to pick your battles. And he wasn't happy about that. The guy said that Obama was very distraught about that.
But he trusted his advisors to say, you won't win.
So here's the thing. He trusted his advisors, and he went out for years and said he played the whole good Christian card. You can see this in interviews and videos. He plays the whole good Christian card about how, well, I believe in civil partnerships, but marriage is, it's a religious thing between a man and a woman. He says this for his whole first term. All of a sudden, second term, he's on the bandwagon.
Yep.
Because he's gotten healthcare done and he can finally do it. So he flip-flopped, but very, very unwillingly almost. And it was part of his agenda the whole time. So it's really fascinating to me to think about like why these change in perspectives really happen. Like, what was the initiation? Like, what was the true motivation all along? And I would have never guessed that. Like, I just thought he was kind of full of shit a little bit.
I think he's a politician.
Well, he's totally a politician, but like that's being a politician in like not the worst way possible, because you have to be realistic too. It's like, yeah, you're not going to get fucking universal health care and gay marriage, same-sex marriage in the same fucking term. It doesn't happen. They were right.
Also,
that was smart.
Just the realistic limits of like, you can't get elected if you're,
well, that was the other thing.
Not towing certain lines.
That was
right?
the other thing. It's like they probably calculated that too. Like,
of course, all these rules are out the window with Trump.
Right, but they were probably like, you're not going to carry fucking Wisconsin if you're going into the election talking about all this shit. Like, you got to pick your battles, right? It's all an uphill slope. It's not a it's not
another flip flop. Just to bring it full circle back to John McCain. I have to look into. Like, Joe, do you know this offhand? When did John McCain? I know he was outspoken against Trump, but when he got his like kind of health death sentence, pretty much, he changed his tune on Trump to be much more direct, right?
I would have to look into it more because he was beefing with Trump for Let me
see what I can find just roughly as I'm here.
Yeah, he was beefing with Trump going back to the before. I don't know if it was before the primary, that clip that you played where he says he's not a war hero, whether that's before the primary or during the primaries, but it was certainly before Trump was president. So this goes back years, and I know after that they were certainly, he had, he basically had the very strong things to say against Trump unless it was policy that he agreed with, which to his credit,
I mean, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like McCain, And all these politicians, on one level, you want them to just say what they think at all times, right?
Yeah.
Be a real person. Speak the truth the best that you know it, let's say, right?
Which is what Trump does. Is truth is just shit.
That's a good point. And it from a certain perspective, Trump is speaking his mind. It's just his mind's broken.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, that's a great point. Neil deGrasse Tyson in that Joe Rogan interview, they get into a whole debate, and Joe Rogan's not happy about it because Neil Tyson, and this ties into what we were saying earlier about how I think he's become a much more respectful and effective communicator, in my opinion, is because he talks about defining 3 types of truths.
Yeah, objective, personal, and
Trump. Basically,
Yeah.
seriously, like that's basically what he defines. But he says, like, I'm willing to give you your own personal truths. Like, if you believe
that's part of his
Jesus,
changing tune, though.
Yeah, Jesus came, was resurrected, and then he went up to heaven, and you're gonna die, and you're gonna be with Jesus. Great, that's true for you. I that's fine. Like, we live in a free country. That's great. I am not in the business of trying to convince you otherwise.
Yeah.
But you cannot let your personal truth affect. Try to force my objective truth or press upon
what he said is
what objective truth is, not my objective
that,
truth, but what
but
objective
also
truth
if I
is.
have a personal belief,
Yeah.
which he's saying a personal truth, right?
Yeah.
He's just shifting the word belief with truth.
Yeah,
because
that's what they were sort of arguing.
his
yeah,
concept
that
was
distinction.
that, well, for the person who believes it, it is a truth, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I believe
And he's
that.
just-
I believe that New York style regular pizza is better than Sicilian style regular pizza, but I'm not gonna go to war and die over that because
Well,
it's
the
not
problem-
my personal truth. I just kind of believe it.
The real problem is that there are people like us, I think we have a distinction, a sort of a knowledge that there's a difference between objective truths and subjective truths, right?
Yeah.
So we know that the
Yeah.
equations that describe how gravity works are a different kind of truth than my political beliefs
Right. Right.
or even the things I think are meaningful and true in life, that kind of thing.
yeah, values.
Those are different.
Yeah.
I mean, so this also gets into like the cool philosophy of knowledge in general, like a priori versus post priori, like knowledge.
Oh, you fucking neoliberal, intellectual, dark web touting,
Well, what I mean is like
superior,
take this a priori
privileged,
sentence, Joe.
a-pritastic bastard you. Yeah, go ahead.
All
Say your fancy
bachelors
words.
are unmarried.
Uh,
That's just a sentence that has to be true if any of the words in it are to mean anything.
that's not true. I could be married to my TV.
Then you're not a bachelor if you're married.
I mean, figuratively, not literally.
You
You know how people say like, "Oh, that guy, he's just married to his TV. That's all he does is watch."
a simpler
fucking
way to
baseball."
say it would be 3 + 2 is 5. So it's saying that there are categories of knowledge that are non-negotiable, right?
Now, if you're in 1984, bitch, 3 + 2 = 6.
Even the equations for gravity are a level not as true as all bachelors are unmarried, because we might be wrong about gravity.
Oh, there's also other shit going on. There's like dark matter and shit fucking it
Well,
up.
that's what I mean. And our model of the universe could be off.
Yeah.
So I think it's important as a human, and if you're interacting, like I just pulled up, by the way, I searched Trump, McCain, like arguments, and there were a million hits on YouTube, whatever. I chose the BBC. If I'm scrolling through this, right, I have to start to turn on my, skepticism.
Thinking years.
I have to say, okay, what am I reading? Who's writing it? And it's really tiring. And sometimes I just don't want to do it. That's why I mostly stay away
Dude.
from politics.
Dude, I teach like every semester. It's like 15-week English writing courses. Spend at least 2 weeks on assessing sources. And the battle is just students saying, what do you mean I have to ask? I have a sheet for evaluating sources. I should send it to you. You'd probably be interested in it.
Do it.
It's called
I'm
valid.
on email now.
You're on the emails,
Yeah.
the interwebs, the intellectual
AOL.
interwebs.
Yeah.
It's called a valid sources worksheet. And what you do is you go through and you take a source and you ask about 30 questions. It's like 4 pages of questions
Yeah.
for each source. and you assign points to them based on
Oh, and you give it a score of how valid it is.
of how
basically.
and
Yeah.
there's tiers, and it's like, well, this tier is probably a valid source. This tier is probably not as valid. This tier, you probably shouldn't be using this to support your argument. This tier, where did you get this from? Like,
Right.
you know, there's these levels here.
Oh, we got it
However-
from funktangpodcast.wordpress.com. It's like, don't use that then.
Don't use that. Oh no! If a student cited our WordPress
Without realizing it.
in their paper, oh, they would fail. I would absolutely fail them. But here's the thing: is that those tiers can mean everything and nothing, right? One of the questions is, how old is the source? So you go through and you say, well, if it's within the last year, it gets more points. I forget the exact point number, but it gets more points because it's more recent. You know, and as you go back in years, well, that could be outdated information, so it gets fewer and fewer points.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
What if you're writing a paper on the historical situation 30 years ago or 40, 50 years ago in Vietnam, and you want to use a primary source from that time? Then you should do that from the date that it happened, probably within the context of what people were saying then and why, and analyzing that. That's like 5 more questions you just had to ask and think about in terms of assessing that part of whether or not that's a valid source. And you explain that to students, and they're like, can I just get it on BuzzFeed?
But you know what the biggest problem with students is, they're thinking, how do I write a paper that gets a good grade?
Yeah.
They're not thinking, how do I write the best paper?
Well, this is why I don't give grades during the semester. Do you know how I do? Do you know how you give grades during the semester?
Is it like Arrested Development, where at the school where children are neither to be seen nor heard?
Not quite.
How do they grade there?
But,
Is
but
it
I
like-
might get
is it like
there
a s-
eventually.
What's
I
the grading
forget.
system? Like a smiley face? or
Yeah, it's
something?
a smiley face. Yeah. What I do is I have, so this is standard, and I would say this is pretty much, I mean, this was my experience in college, was you'd hand in a paper, you'd wait way too long, you'd get back your paper with not enough comments on it and a letter grade. And it's like, all right, the teacher, the professor, whoever, clearly maybe read half of this.
And then was like, B+.
I feel B+.
Yeah.
And here are the reasons why, if you're lucky.
And if you were to like get into the details of what's the difference between a B+
They'd
and
be
an
like,
A-,
here's an A.
it's like, whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know.
take an A.
Who cares? I was drinking whiskey. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm drinking whiskey now.
Yeah.
Like, here's what I do. I don't know if I'm going to do it this semester because it's actually a lot more work, but it's a lot more effective. It's just, yeah. Anyways, that's a whole other episode. But this is what I normally do.
What, not working hard at your job? Go on.
Working too hard at my job.
Yeah.
It takes too. Here's my point: is it takes too long
For you, yeah.
Well, because here's the thing: it's like you have a class, right? And I can either assign papers and then do what I just said that everybody did to me when I was in college, read them 10 minutes, maybe mark up what I can, throw a letter grade, slap a letter grade on it. Next,
Slap a letter grade on
slap it. Oh, I put them.
Ooh, dirty, man.
Each
Get
each
slap
finger I have
that
a letter grade
on
and
it, man.
I'm just fingering them. Yeah, it's bad.
You're fingering your students.
That's not what I said for the record at all.
No, go on. I heard you.
Anyways,
You're slapping and fingering your students. That's
oh my
what.
God. Like, share, and subscribe. What I do instead is I do draft conferences. And what I do for draft conferences is I have the students bring in their papers and I give them my rubric. I explain the rubric in class and I give them the rubric and I say, grade your paper and bring it to me and we'll talk about it. And that's what we do for drafts.
Good.
So they come in.
Grade your own paper.
They come in and they're like, well, I better not write shit because how am I going to write shit and then grade it and then give it to you to talk about? This is mind-blowing to them.
Is it almost like trying to break a robot like in Star Trek? Where
Oh, yeah.
Because
You're hacking their programming because
Yeah.
they're so programmed. And they ask, they're like, well, when are we handing in the paper? I'm like, you're grading it first. Like, and they're like, what? And I go, yeah, I don't want to read.
you're getting graded on how well you grade your own paper.
Yes.
So it's like, should I be a good writer or a good grader?
And guess what? You have to do both in that case, right? It's fucking brilliant. So they bring me these papers, and then I tell them either
You're
why
brilliant, Joe.
I'm something all right, and I tell them either why yeah, that's about right, but maybe you want to do this, or like, oh, you're not even close, not even near there.
Yeah, you're off the mark.
But here's the thing: they have to.
Your
now-
mark is off the mark too. You fail.
totally off the mark. But they have to put in the work now, right? The problem with that is that to do that well takes about 20 minutes per paper to go over with them.
Yeah.
It's a lot lot easier for me to just collect the paper, grade it, and hand
You know
it
what's
back,
even
throw it
easier?
back to them.
If you didn't even care,
Well, that's the
You
other
know?
thing. Yeah.
which I would say, unfortunately, too many teachers do
But I got to tell you, dude, at the college level, too many teachers aren't paid enough.
to
do it.
care enough.
They're not. That's what it comes down to. The universities don't want to pay them. I mean, we covered this in the higher ed episode. It's you can look at the numbers, dude. It's like
Yeah.
it's really a shame because it's like,
And I hate when people say like, "Oh, well, you should just do it for the good of it." It's like, yes, a little bit, but there's also the realistic like, you need to put food on the table.
well, that's the problem with
And-
a lot of these teachers is they have to take more courses.
They have to take a bunch of jobs, right?
Yeah, they got to take a bunch. I mean, I teach college. I teach at 3 schools right now. I'm not full time at any of them, even though I work full time and I work in a restaurant.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck kind of system is this we're running in higher education, right?
And you're almost
That's the
paid
way it
off
is.
your student loans.
I don't want to talk about it. Like, share, and subscribe. Patreon supporters,
Let's
come
wrap
help.
up, Joe.
What time is it?
It's an hour and 15. Is
Ah,
that a
shit.
time?
Yeah, that's a time. I have a closing quote. Not a closing quote, but a wrapping up quote.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Drop it.
All right. So, I mean, we kind of dabbled on a lot of topics, I feel like, this episode. But I think this was good to come back to kind of rerouting us in the sense of, like, what's going on with intellectualism or the lack of intellectual rigor in assessing, like, what's going on in the world and really asking the hard questions. And I just want to reiterate, like, I understand that there's so much noise right now, and there's only more growing noise. And I think the important thing is to really assess yourself before you assess others, right?
Good advice.
If you can really do that at, like, each level, each iteration of what you're doing in life, and
Ask the question to yourself first.
well, first
Am
of
I
all,
wrong in my analysis of this?
well, first of all, just stop and fucking breathe. Like, everybody, like, literally, like,
Yeah.
stop and, like,
Yeah.
just take a breath.
In meditation, they call it respond, don't react.
Yeah, people
Take a breath.
People
and
got to start
you'll
doing that.
immediately create some distance between the reaction you were about to have.
Yeah.
And even if you're by yourself and you see someone post something on Facebook, the reaction wave passes through your mind.
I think
step back.
I
breathe.
think taking a breath would save the American economy like $200 billion a year, probably, and a lot of stress.
Also, it costs
Don't know
them a
how.
lot of money because when people are about to buy that like 50-inch, plasma TV online that they can't
They'll
afford,
be like,
they
man,
might,
I should really spend that money on that hemorrhoid cream instead.
or they might be like, man, I should actually pay my child support payments or something and not get a big screen TV. Like, let me take a breath and think about that. Like, who knows?
Anyways, my point is going back to perspectives, and I think John McCain. I mean, there's a lot of other people right now talking about John McCain who know a lot more about him, who have like worked with him or talked to him before, and I've learned a lot about him just in the last couple of days. I feel like more than I ever really knew, and I think, like everyone else, like you say, at the end of the day, like he's a person. I didn't always agree with what he said or what he did, but I respected a lot of oftentimes how he went about his business. And again, not always. There were moments where I just said, man, that's a sellout move, and I really can't respect that. But at the same time,
I
he's
don't
done.
know of a politician who I can't say
That's my
off
point.
the top of my head.
Well, that's my point. At the same time, he's done things and been through things that I can't imagine, and I don't know. I don't know if
He's
I
followed
could have
through
done.
on, let's say, an honor code to a level I never have.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, you can't take that away. Is my point. And so I want to.
Yeah, you can. He got captured. Boom.
Well, so here's the thing.
Take it away. Boom.
I want to, for my part, end with this quote, which is the one I shared with you earlier, and it's this guy Jake Taper. I forget, CNN.
Is that the CNN guy?
Yeah, and this was an interview from about a year ago, right when he was diagnosed, or shortly after John McCain was diagnosed with essentially terminal brain cancer, and this is how he ended the interview. Jake Taper said, "I hope I don't run this clip for another 50 years, but how do you want the American people to remember you?" And this is what McCain responded. "He served his country and not always right. Made a lot of mistakes, made a lot of errors, but served his country. And I hope we could add honorably."
I thought that was a Vonnegut quote, or You were saying it's a Vonnegut-esque quote.
I was saying it was a Vonnegut-esque quote.
Gotcha.
But see what I mean? How it seems like a Vonnegut
I just
quote?
got a little goosebumps from that because, like,
Yeah.
that seems like a zoomed out perspective. Man,
Yeah, you hear that. And
death does that to people.
yeah, you hear that and you're like, I mean, you want to talk about a juxtaposition with Trump. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Utterly opposite end of the spectrum. And that really made me, like, when I saw it, because I remember hearing that a year ago and thinking, like, yeah, I can hold those. We've talked about this before, like holding two conflicting viewpoints in your mind
At the same time,
I think it
live with the tension.
Yeah, and I think it applies to people too, and that's a perfect example where, like, yeah, he didn't always do things, but he recognized that. You know, like, I think in part he's admitting to some of those contradictions that people have called him out upon, right?
And we all have contradictions.
Yeah, who am I to, like, you know, fair enough. So I just wanted to mention that before we.
I think that's a good quote to leave it on.
Yeah, I would say so. So like, share, and subscribe.
On the topic of honor, I highly recommend checking out some of the podcasts with the Very Bad Wizards. One of the Very Bad Wizards hosts wrote a book recently, just came out maybe 5 months ago, called Why Honor Matters.
Oh,
and
cool.
The concept is, like, there's a lot of criticism of honor and a lot of reasons why honor is bad. Think of Imperial Japanese Empire. Think of, like, honor killings in Islam.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of things that people do, bad behavior in the name of honor.
Our colonization
But there are a
episode
lot
will
of
go into that too.
Amazing, sacrificial, just it makes you see, like, maybe that's what the meaning of life is type things.
Yeah.
Are also associated with honor. So in a sense, honor is like anything. It has its bad side expressions and it has its beautiful side expressions.
Yeah.
And I think that is, like, a great example of, like, the difference between a Trump and a McCain. Because when I see a Trump, my brain tells me, like, if he were just a personal interaction I had, you know, I would just be on total guard and just assume this person is just a vampire, you know? And I've met vampires in real life.
Yeah.
I don't mean, like, vampires that suck your blood. I mean vampires that suck your life energy.
They ain't sexy.
And they're not sexy vampires. These are people that just manipulate and try to, you know, take over people's lives and dominate. And Trump is that kind of person. He doesn't care about values or honor, right? He doesn't have honor. I would say Trump, the difference between Trump and McCain is Trump does not have honor.
Yeah.
And that's a bad thing.
You know what's funny? If you asked him that, he'd be like, I would say I have
I
have good honor. Probably the best honor any president has ever had.
I might have. He'll say might because then you're like, oh, he's being humble, right?
Yeah.
I might have the best honor.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, let's end it there. Fuck that guy.
All right, so we'll see you next week for.
After this episode, it'll give me some time to clean up Seinfeld Part 2, so we'll publish that. And then it might be a little bit, like a week and a half. I'll be back from Turkey, and we got Colonization Part 1 and 2. We got Beer History.
Yeah.
And we got Intellectual Dark Web coming out.
It's going to be good. It's going to be gold,
and
baby.
Johnny's getting off work a lot, so we're going to be back in full swing. Stick with us. Consider donating on Patreon if you enjoy this shit.
Hit me up on Twitter. We're blowing
Tweet
up on
us,
Twitter.
Twat us. Instagram
Hit us up on Patreon. If you donate enough, we'll go to the Flat Earth convention.
We're serious,
I'll
thinking up
do
some new ways to, like, reward Patreon people or encourage. And I bought a new car recently, and one of the ways I've been
we got to do
making
this.
a little extra money to pay for that car is, like, driving Uber.
Do you want to?
And I have some insane story. I just did it for 1 week.
Do you want to do that tomorrow? We could do that tomorrow.
Yeah, sure. I have some insane
Tomorrow's Tuesday. Yeah, we could do that.
Uber stories already.
Well, let's do a Patreon tomorrow.
I'll give a little tease right now.
Okay, do a little tease.
A lady with a broken arm who had a backpack filled with Coronas. She was drinking one of them in the back seat. She had no teeth, and she was yelling at me about Obamacare.
So, like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, so like, share, and subscribe on Patreon.
Yeah.
That could be like a sort of Patreon featured thing, like Uber stories.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll record people.
Luke Uber stories.
Luber stories.
Luber stories.
All right, peace.
Later.
I should turn the YouTube off too.
Please. Wait, so we're still on YouTube. So if I tell them all to go fuck themselves, they're gonna hear it.
Yep.
Oh man, that's not good. How many people are listening?
1.
Wait, really? Is it Duluth Atheist?
I don't know. How do you end this?
Wait, who's listening?